Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have talked extensively about this Miami Hurricanes football team heading into 2025. We've looked at this depth chart, the new coaching staff, the new defense from just about every single angle you could possibly look at a football team from. But what we haven't really done yet is looked at this 2025 schedule. And when you talk about making the college football playoffs, when you talk about making a run in the college football playoffs, how your schedule lines up, it matters. And you look at Miami, a couple of things that stand out to me right off the bat. Most notably, you don't play Clemson in the ACC. To me, Clemson and Miami are clearly the two best teams on paper heading into the 2025 year in the ACC. I think that's what the ACC championship game is going to look like come the end of the year. I think the second thing you kind of notice is Miami does not leave the state of Florida until November 1st, going on the road to play SMU. Your only other road game in the first 2 months, you're going to Tallahassee to play Florida State on October 4th. And then I think the last one that jumps out, and I think this one jumps out immediately to everybody, is that week one game against Notre Dame, where look, Notre Dame's a very good football team. I think they're going to be a very good football team in 2025. We obviously saw them play for a national championship in the 2024 year. If you are a Miami Hurricane fan and you are just right off the surface looking at this matchup, the one thing that makes you feel good about an opener against Notre Dame is that you got a 6-year quarterback in Carson Beck that has played in a lot of big football games over his career, going up against the Notre Dame quarterback that we're not sure who it's going to be, but whoever it is for Notre Dame has not really played a ton of football in their collegiate career. I think the leader in the clubhouse is probably, redshirt freshman CJ Carr. They got a couple of names that I think are intriguing at the quarterback spot, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame is going to be going on the road to a brand new defense, of which the secondary I think can be pretty dang good, with a quarterback that just hasn't played in much football games, period, but certainly hasn't played in a game like the magnitude we're going to see on Sunday night, August 31st. And I think the other thing about that matchup is that there's going to be a lot of football teams that play Notre Dame and just cannot block them up on the offensive line. I'm a big fan of what Notre Dame's front seven looks like going into the 2025 year. Miami's one of those teams that they have the offensive line, especially the an older offensive line, that I think can deal with this Notre Dame front seven, which I think matters in that matchup too. Now, I'm not getting up here and saying Miami's gonna cakewalk win this football game, but there are some reasons if you are a Miami Hurricane fan to look at that matchup and say, if I'm gonna choose to play Notre Dame, when do I want to play them? You probably want to have play them week one, especially when you have a six year senior quarterback going up against the quarterback for Notre Dame that just has not played much football. Want to get into the rest of the schedule. Now, before we do, and as always, the Miami Hurricane fans, one, appreciate you guys. I mean, we've talked a lot about this football team in spring practice, talked a lot about this football team on the recruiting trail. The amount of support the Miami fans have been showing the boys in the months of February and March means the absolute world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, from the Miami fans, we're probably not going to do an official prediction in terms of what their record is going to be, because I want to let spring ball and the spring transfer portal play out. But early expectations, I would love to hear from the Miami Hurricane fans. I got high expectations. My personal expectations for this Miami team is 10 plus wins, playing for an ACC championship, and finding your way to the college football playoffs. Would love to hear from the Miami Hurricane fans in the comments section as well. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, you start with that matchup against Notre Dame. We're gonna find out a lot about both of those teams on Sunday night. I'm personally just fired up for it. Bethune-Cookman, USF should be confident wins for this Miami Hurricanes team. Then you play Florida to kind of close out the month of September. The way I look at it is, one, you love playing that game at home, but number two, if you can just go 3-1, with that Notre Dame game and Florida game, can you win one of those? I think it puts you in a really good spot to make a run in the back half of the season. I think it puts you in a really good spot to make the college football playoffs, but you probably want to win one of those football games. Obviously, for Miami, there's no red on this schedule. There's not a team on this schedule that I am kind of chalking up as a loss for this Miami Hurricanes team. But both of those games are toss-ups, and you want to win one of those and kind of get the momentum in the back half of the season. Go into a bye week, then you play Florida State on the road. That should be, to me, a comfortable win as we sit right now with Florida State. Florida State's kind of that enigma team, but I think a lot of Miami fans are confident in that matchup. I love the bye here. No, I don't love the two buys 2 out of your 3 weeks here, but I do love the bye before you play Louisville, because Louisville is one of those teams that, hey, Coach Brown's one of the best in the business, especially at scheming up an offense. Having that extra week for this new defensive staff to prepare for what Jeff Brom's going to be throwing at Miami, that to me, I think matters, and it matters a lot. And then you look at this Louisville team, and the thing I'm looking at here, I think Louisville's going to be good. I'm a fan of Miller Moss at quarterback. They lose a lot on the defensive side of the football, specifically in the front seven. And I'm not sure that they did enough in the transfer portal to really match up against Miami along the lines of scrimmage. And this kind of goes to a broader idea I have around this Miami team in 2025, where because the line of scrimmage play is so good, because I think this run game can be so dominant for Miami, I think you can play some of these games in a little bit more of a game control style where, hey, we're going to run the football, control the time possession, kind of dictate how this game is played. Where I felt like last year, because the defense struggled so much, it just, so many games with teams that Miami was better than, they got into these shootout games where it was like whoever had the football last wins. When you have a guy like Cam Ward, you win a lot of those games. I think Miami, because of how they're constructed on the offensive side of the football and how good I think this rushing attack can be and how good I think they are along the line of scrimmage, you can play that game against Louisville and say, hey, we know Louisville's going to put up some points, and they got weapons on offense. They got a good quarterback in Miller Moss. They got Jeff Brom calling the plays, but we can control how this game's getting played. And we can really establish the line of scrimmage, run the football, and control the time possession, which I think will help Miami avoid being in so many of those really close, last one with the football wins the game style games. And I think that's going to matter against Louisville. Stanford at home, hard travel week for Stanford, should be a win. On the road at SMU, that's the one you circle. SMU, I think, is going to be a very good team. We're obviously all familiar with Rhett Lashley. Kevin Jennings, one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. To me, that's a game that you have circled. If Miami is going to make the college football playoffs, you have to win that game against SMU. And what excites me the most about Miami going into this year is I think they're, one, way better in the secondary, but I think they're a much faster team. And you look at SMU, they want to spread you out and they want to run circles around you with all the speed they have on offense. I think Miami on defense, because they're so much faster and athletic, it's a better matchup than it would have been last year against SMU, where the score probably would have been like 55-50. Whoever has the ball last wins. Syracuse, I know Syracuse got Miami last year. Now you get them coming down to Coral Gables. I really struggle to see Syracuse being a good football team. They lose a lot in terms of Kyle McCord at quarterback, in terms of some of their best pass catchers on that football team, in terms of the offensive line. The defense was never really all that good for Syracuse last year. That should be a comfortable win. Even though Miami lost that football game last year, I just think Miami gets better at a lot of spots. I think Syracuse probably worse off. NC State, another one of those teams that I just don't think is going to be nearly as good as we're used to seeing, especially getting them at home. Now, I have these last two games highlighted in purple because you're going on the road late November to Virginia Tech and to Pitt. Looking at the Virginia Tech game first, you kind of have to highlight it in purple because it's a really difficult environment. And if Miami's as good of a football team as we think they're going to be, you're looking at a top 10 team going on the road to Lane Stadium. Virginia Tech and that crowd is going to get up for that game. That is going to be a game where there's a lot of energy in Blacksburg, Virginia before that game. I think Miami has the better roster. They should be at least a touchdown favorite, but I highlighted it in purple because I'm kind of at the point where it's like, hey, you got to show me you can go on the road and win those kind of football games, especially late in November, where this Miami Hurricanes team struggled on the road. Virginia Tech, to me, kind of missed their opportunity a little bit in 2024. Yeah, I thought that was a really good team that returned pretty much the whole roster from 2023. had an exciting quarterback in Kyron Drones, made some really intriguing additions in the portal, and just didn't do enough with it. I don't think Virginia Tech's as good of a football team as we saw in 2024, even when they underperformed in the 2024 year. Then you go on the road to Pitt, that has again one of those, Cade Bell and that Pitt offense with Eli Holstein running it. That's a tricky offense. Kind of like we talked about with SMU, Pitt's going to want to get their speed and space. They got an electric running back in Desmond Reed. Because Miami should be more athletic on defense, you like Miami's chances of dealing with offenses like SMU and like Pitt better than they were able to deal with those kind of offenses in the 2024 year. The big storyline for me is how well can this defense perform? How good is this defense going into 2025? Because I look at the offense and say the points per game, you might not be number one in the country like you were last year with Cam Ward. You're probably going to lean on running the football, being a little bit more methodical. The offense is still going to move the football, and the offense is not going to punt as much as a lot of people think. And I think slowing down the game, controlling how these games are played, and really establishing the run, which, look, Miami ran the football well last year. They just didn't run it all that much because they had a quarterback in Cam Ward and they had a defense that really couldn't stop a nosebleed. I look for Miami to be in more control of a lot of these football games. And I ideally for Miami fans, we're not looking up at the scoreboard late in the fourth quarter and being in so many one possession football games, because you can control the time possession and you can run the football and you play better defense. Making the college football playoffs is about being consistent. And with the run game and the defense that we expect Miami to have, you're ideally in more control and more consistent of a football team in the 2025 year, even if it's not as high flying and as high scoring as it was in the 2024 year. We'll see how it shakes out. We obviously got a lot to talk about, right? There's a lot of storylines for Miami in spring ball. We expect them to get somewhat active in the transfer portal coming up in the spring. A lot of these conversations can change, but if you're Miami, you know you have a chance to win every single one of these football games. You're going to be favored in just about every single one of these football games as well. The reason I have it highlighted in some of these games in purple is there are a few tough road matchups late in the season at SMU, at Virginia Tech, and at Pitt. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.